So here we are. We're at the last of the 60-odd Romhacks of this retrospective. The road to this point has been tumultuous, to say the least, taking us through many ups and downs and all-arounds, but it's time to finish things up. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in each and every time you have, and enjoy the finale of Super Monkey Ball Romhacks, Retrospective. If you've heard of any ROM hack of Monkey Ball before watching this retrospective, anything at all, it was almost certainly Super Monkey Ball Gaiden. To many, it is the Monkey Ball ROM hack. It acts as the most common gateway to the modding community, has received publicity on a scope significantly greater than any prior work, and to this day remains very popular among speedrunners of ROM hacks. It even has a following within spaces that almost exclusively revolve around official installments. It's the only release that has any sort of public precedent in terms of critique or review. For most creators and speedrunners alike, it's their go-to favorite, and in many ways, the core of what I had to say about Gaiden isn't far from expectations. Its polish is second to none, approaching an overall fidelity that rivals what AV themselves accomplished, even exceeding it at points. Its use of more complex objects like switches, portals, conveyors, and even the Romhack original jump pads is all rivaled by few on any one of them, and by none for the whole suite. And of course, Gaiden's sense of scale is unforgettably impactful. Just one look at stages like Battle Royale or Colossus, and immediately you'll be able to tell that compared to both vanilla and previous ROM hacks alike, the scale is on another level here. But there's so much more to Gaiden than those surface level aspects. So as we've done with the 11 complete packs before it, let's take a look at each part of Gaiden in greater detail to better understand just how it became the community icon it is today. World 1 of Gaiden is probably the most intricate and difficult opening world of any pack with a coherent difficulty curve. I'm aware that isn't saying much, it's suitably easy after all, but it lays out its levels in such a way that feels surprisingly light on fluff, and isn't afraid to throw in a couple curveballs even this early on. Similar to the sharp opening of 651, Gaiden is able to present its early game with a surprising degree of focus. It can also just be surprisingly tough, even compared to most packs' second world. Meanwhile, Gaiden World 2 has a couple snags that could easily trip up people who've only experienced the official titles. It sends the message before you even make it to World 3 that Gaiden's early game isn't going to be the cakewalk you see in most Monkey Ball early games. And once you hit Dungeon Hall, this effect is only emboldened. Gaiden even throws out its first big puzzle challenges like Ring Field and Battle Royale here, two levels rather well known for, slightly different reasons. Also shout out to I even said Acudal Guillotine, goddammit. Also shout out to Actual Guillotine for being superior to the old Guillotine in both concept and, pardon the pun, execution. World 4 is... wait. Oh no. Brazil! World 4 continues the difficulty curve and slow building sense of scale by introducing perhaps Gaiden's biggest innovation for basic level construction. Animated conveyors. Tug acts as a fantastic introduction to the obstacle, and Emitter makes good use of both normal and counter conveyors for an effective speed stage. There's also foreshadowing for the heavily layered and compacted level design of late game, with Diaphragm and especially Turbine. Turbine also acts as the longest level up to this point by a considerable margin, behaving more in line with an exam stage with a solid execution of centralized rotational movement. Considering all of the moving parts, it's impressive it plays as well as it does, and feels fittingly placed. Crystal Mine is where Gaiden gets its cheekiest in terms of puzzle solving. Dragonfly is definitely an easy level to get stuck on if you don't pay attention, as Ludwig can attest.
Okay.
Ah! For fuck's sake! Some direction!
It also doubles as the start of a trend that Gaiden will keep for almost its entire second half, the Beginner's Trap opening. Drop of Doom also comes with its own cheeky opening jump, albeit one very useful to speedruns, and Jumpplex does some unique things to target bounce pad abuse. For those unaware, bounce pads that aren't animated offer a greater jump height when used repeatedly. If unaccounted for, this can easily result in level design that's particularly prone to exorbitant skips. Jumpplex plays with this effect in fun ways, albeit with some pretty thin wires thrown in too. Easily the most complicated at a glance is the hectic maze awaiting you at the end. Warframes takes a very similar approach to many stage builder levels, acting as a choose-your-own-adventure pathway. Just looking at those examples, you can guess that World 5 probably contains the least conveyance of any Gaiden world. But besides Dragonfly, all of them can be pretty easily understood with just a handful of plays. There's also some fantastic speed stages here to break up the more technical and puzzle-oriented side of the world. Range and especially Perimeter are both some of the best stages of their type, both for Gaiden and in general. And then there's World 6. I don't usually talk about music when it's not original to the Romhack, but I gotta hand it to Cutsman. Nightwalker by Raito for Under Night and Birth has to be one of, if not the, single most fitting non-Monkey Ball track I've ever heard for one of these projects. If this isn't Monkey Ball side story music, then I don't know what is. City Skyway also carries the second beginner's trap for newcomers with Tripwire. Finding the rhythm on this one can be pretty tricky, especially if you haven't played similar stages in previous packs. Circus can be a little difficult to manage as well until you understand the fast cycle, and even then, it can feel a little wonky. World 6 is also home to my least favorite stage in Gaiden, Seismic. The collision here is just non-existent sometimes, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. It's a neat staging concept, but it needed a little more time to work as consistently as it should. Sakura Grove is where you really begin to feel the heat in terms of difficulty. Ikaruga continues the trend of acting as a wake-up call to start off the world, but this time it's followed up by levels of comparable difficulty. Most well known for this world is Phantasm, many other people's least favorite stage in Gaiden. And in terms of execution, I can definitely understand why. The concept of banana conservation is great in my opinion, but the placement of them here isn't always the best. That, and it's very easy to clip the tilt bridge in ways that are almost impossible to correct for. I'd say most of the issues could have been solved by turning Phantasm into 2 levels, probably in separate worlds. As is, the most frustrating part is having to do the easy part over and over while you blindly charge into the second. I'd still say Seismic's wonky collision is more of an issue though, but one weak level, as well as one far too easy skip, doesn't stop World 7 from still being great. Upstream might be my favorite looking level outside of World 9 for the way its color choices suit it so perfectly, and Focus Breaker's tricky implementation of thin wires matched with jump pads is very well done. Gaokao is also a solid ending obstacle course. World 8's overall aesthetic and feel is top notch all the way through. The more mechanical level design and greater implementation of buttons serves the world brilliantly. And once again, the choice of music is on point for similar reasons to Nightwalker, and to a lesser extent World 9. It's kind of odd how much more climactic this space colony feels than the real one from Vanilla Monkey Ball 2, but here we are. There's also some minor graphical details here that I think were mostly just bonuses of the way Monkey Ball 2's engine already worked, but are still great. For instance, the way the spark trail from the section you were just on is still visible after leaving it on gradient descent is such a cool effect. Gyroscope carries a similarly small inclusion while also being the highlight of the world visually. Visionary is a very ambitious level creator stage with a ton of variance between its options. Perhaps most famous of the World 8 stages, though, is Raise, and for good reason. Outside of some of the wonkiness of button collision inherent to Monkey Ball 2's engine, this one is a stellar showcase of them, all in sequence and fitting in great as a part of the level theme. By the time you hit World 9, the scale has already grown past what every other Romhacker official stage has done before. And once you're really into the thick of it after 3 fairly easy openers, the sense of scale receives a huge bump once again with a killer level theme to go with it. Once you hit Strum, the world really gets going. Strum's unique movement feel sets the tone for much of the remaining world, which maintains a priority on unique and ambitious animations. The Antagonizer even packs 3 entirely new ones into one level. Axel and Fallout Zone make use of their own unique movement challenges in fun ways, but all of those pale in comparison to Lightspeed, Apparatus, and Colossus. Lightspeed in particular is the single greatest speed stage ever made. It's damn close to perfection. It even manages to incorporate an enormous shuttle loop that actually works. As far as I'm aware, this is the only time any attempt at a manual shuttle loop in a 3D game has even worked close to this well. It doesn't feel totally perfect, but in lieu of what came before, it's stunningly impressive. Apparatus is one of the longest stages in the game, acting almost like a Metroidvania title in its progression, and does so almost perfectly. The only issue is the bridge to the goal's placement not being totally clear. Colossus more or less acts as a warm-up for what World 10 will be throwing at you, and does it in the form of a boss fight against a robot packing both a sword and a machine gun. Is it a little too tough for World 9? Oh yes, definitely. But I think it does work as a finale for World 9 when looking at what World 10 has in store. As for why it isn't 9-10, yeah, I got nothing for that. This or Lightspeed, the world is called Lightspeed Warp after all, really should have been the end, as cool as Apparatus is. World 10 begins, like the majority of the worlds before it, with a pretty brutal beginner's trap with Exodus, a septiplex obstacle course with some of the most unforgiving trade-offs in the game. Pandora's Box doesn't let up much from there with difficult to track animations and complex backtracking. Genesis, no, I don't know how this ended up after Exodus, is actually one of the more forgiving rolling block stages I've played. Compared to brackets from Monkey 2 World 10, this really isn't so bad. Trick Room is perhaps the single most impressive and fully faceted maze stage ever, filled with one-way walls that keep you on your toes the entire time. It's great.
One of my favorite playtesting experiences to share was Trick Room. So the concept of the stage is a bunch of one-way walls, so it's like you can't backtrack past certain points. And the idea was, all right, whenever you go through an invisible wall, or a one-way wall at low speed, which you can't see when you're approaching it, so it's basically an invisible wall, you get popped forward a little. So the idea is he wants to make all the transitions so that you will never get screwed over by that pop. So to go, he gave me a top-down map of everything, and I was like, okay, test the transitions. Tell me what about what. And I returned to him with a map with like all these different color-coded like things with different, just showing, okay, well, these are the bad transitions, these are the okay transitions, these are the perfectly fine ones, these are things I'd change, like add banana bunches here, have other notes as well, like for the really crazy stages, sometimes you had to do stuff like that.
When I was super young, my favorite toy was this thing called Perplexus. It looked like this clear ball that had all these things inside of it, and you had to roll like a little marble through it.
Ouroboros is mostly known for its absolutely bonkers star switch, a feature exclusive to it as far as I'm aware. It behaves like a fast forward, but on Ouroboros it is an exceptional boost in difficulty due to the constant rotation of the stage. It is fascinating how you can change your routing though. Red Sea, much like Upstream for World 7, looks amazing here and plays even better. The constant flow of the stage is very impressive considering its length, with that corner cross being one of the most nerve-wracking in the game. Shadow Tag is a stage that I absolutely adore in concept. It reminds me of the Metal Sonic race at the end of Certa Speedway, but man, the way the Shadow actually has collision is really frustrating on occasion. Had this behaved more like a developer time trial ghost, I think this would have worked much better. And last but certainly not least, is Curtain Call. A supremely difficult gauntlet and highlight reel of every past world, plus an amazing ending that I feel I absolutely cannot spoil here. My only issue is the focus breaker wire just being a little too thin, but that's far from being the end of the world. Well, actually, it is pretty close to the end of the world, but you know what I mean. As I was about to cross the last gold tape though, something dawned on me when it came to these massive levels that Gaiden is known for. Something crucial. These stages aren't mere exams. They're not even boss fights. They're challenge modes. By looking back on what I've commented on up to this point, it's pretty clear that my preference for Monkey Ball's progression is challenge mode. The linearity, the intuitability, the inherent challenge of especially expert mode is something I've come to appreciate quite a lot more recently. That's not to say I can't enjoy a good learner stage, but there's something intrinsically lost with story mode. What I think makes challenge mode so much more impactful to me than story mode is how the former forces you to get better in a way that the latter doesn't. The intensive gauntlet that Expert has you go through, forcing you to learn and eventually master each and every bit of it if you want to earn a chance to face the master level, is in effect with no parallel in story. The only reason one would put the same effort into story is an external one. It comes purely from an individual desire to better understand the game, with no greater reward for doing so. That's great for people who have that drive inherently, but there's nothing in the game to enforce that approach to story mode. Gaiden found a solution to that in a way that I never thought would have worked as well as it does here. a carefully designed microcosm of challenge mode level design compacted into massive gauntlet stages. To be clear, this isn't a one-to-one comparison. Even in Monkey Ball 1, practice mode was always available if you wanted to try any individual pieces of the puzzle. And while that aspect was sorely missed by me a couple of times during some of Gaiden's particularly brutal ending challenges, there's something fascinating to be had with the lack of that option. A virtuosity in being able to complete the run in that strict hierarchy. In the end, the accomplishment of completing the marathon can be all the sweeter when dealing with the limitations Gaiden presents you with. Perhaps that's why Gaiden is so fascinating to so many. It manages to bridge the gap of appeal between story and challenge mode in a way no other pack has, not even my other favorites. There really is something incredible in that.
I like the infinite lives. It allows people to really get into like this zen state of trying over and over, even if something seems really hard. But losing that resource lives, it means that I can't get as bonkers with level design. I would never put something like apparatus or even stuff like light speed in challenge because it's just sort of hard to get the idea of the stage on the first go. Actually, light speed's not really that, but it's hard to understand certain times on like your first go. But having that infinite lives is a big factor. I think the reason why I end up with a lot of marathon levels with a lot of like different bits but an underlying mechanic to them all is because I think this level I want to be a marathon level where you go down, or like this one I want the whole thing to be about unlocking bits to a final mechanism that shoots you through the air. I feel like I've really helped contribute to a lot of the levels that have multiple ways to beat them, and just a lot of larger scale levels in general.
And nowhere in the game is that feeling felt more than in Gaiden's true finale. After all the cool tricks and exceeding of expectations up to this point, it should be no surprise that Gaiden has one more up its sleeve, even after the game was ostensibly over. In this case, one of the coolest unlockable setups I've ever seen in a platformer. I won't spoil it for those hunting for each piece on their own, but I don't feel too bad for spoiling what lies beyond the gate. Just note that the QR code is the single most important hint in the stage for completing it, just in case you missed it on your first go-around like I did. Now then, what exactly was behind that gate? Oh, nothing much. Just literal monkey ball hell. No, not figuratively, literally. This 10-ring journey through hell doubles as both the hardest world in Gaiden, as well as the only linear world constructed within SMB2's engine to date. Even in the game it's actually denoted as World EX. Nice touch. And man does World EX live up to its position as the successor to Runic Realm. Master of All acts as the final tie to the main game via a continuation of Master of None from World 3. Although this time with a happy helping of extra thin wires and quite the time crunch. Maelstrom is the closest to a freebie you're getting in World EX, as unlike every other EX stage, it isn't a multifaceted obstacle course that can be completed accordingly quickly once you know what you're doing. Don't worry though, you have Tartarus waiting for you once you're done. This literally titanic jailbreak is where you get the feel for the rest of World EX on the whole, which is that every stage is so massive that it transcends being experienced like a normal level and becomes like a challenge mode all on its own. And expect that to take quite a few lives once you really start taking it on. Also no, there is no continue or life functionality for those wondering. Gaiden opted for recontextualizing the old life counter into a death counter to great effect. This is a super nice change from normal story mode actually, and also helps make up for the lack of a retry button on the many ultra tall levels like Tartarus. Still doesn't stop me from occasionally pressing pause as I fall out of instinct though. Sisyphus is infamous among speedrunners for button RNG, but when it comes to playing the stage normally, such RNG doesn't really affect the game. As for the rest of the stage, it makes use of some particularly tricky backtracking. Acheron is probably my least favorite of the 10. Don't get me wrong, I love me a good flaming pentagram, and that mini-golf axe mechanic is pretty neat, if a little odd to put together at first. The issues I have with Acheron is mostly in its opening section, mostly due to that really tricky bonk off of this ramp. It's very hard to land due to all the stuff in the way of the minimap. The coil and vanilla guillotine on the ramp system is actually my favorite part, so much so that I wish they'd made it into story levels too. Fortunately, Acheron and its minor shortcomings is followed up by the best stage in the game. Styx. No really, hidden at World EX6 lies one of the most brilliant lighting in a bottle stage executions ever. It's genuinely up there with 8 Bracelets from Monkey Ball 2 as an all-time favorite for me. The stage involves you crossing the river Styx in a controllable raft. Once it starts, there's no stopping it, so it becomes this hectic and brilliant challenge of shifting the raft to the necessary positions in order to unlock the gates required to progress. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. Maybe this ramp. While Styx is adored by many, I'm of the belief that Pride is actually an underrated stage. That might be because I like wires more than most, but Pride makes some really fun challenges with them. I think my only issue is the sweet spot texture on the portal section. The texture extends past the thinner wire in such a way that you could definitely get false positives. The ending choice is great though. I feel similarly about Babel, although bear in mind that the time crunch is a little deceptive on here. The non-linearity is really welcome with obstacles like these, and this is one of the only times Gaiden offers you such freedom. Gauntlet is more of a warm-up for the ending, and as such is mostly notable for another example of non-linearity, albeit slightly less obviously. Also, that ending vault is very satisfying. But at last, the only stage left is none other than the grand finale. Just like Curtain Call is the ending to the main game, the grand finale acts as a brilliant gambit of all of Gaiden's trickiest obstacles, combined into one 5-minute long tour de force of Monkey Ball level design. And it is amazing. Brutal? Absolutely. Frustrating? No doubt about it, especially that point 2 wire that has certainly earned its place in hell. But there's no doubt in my mind that Gaiden shouldn't have, nor could it have, ended any other way. To my surprise, Gaiden lived up to every expectation that had been set for it before I played it. And I came in with a fair few pretty big ones. Again, it's the go-to favorite for both speedrunners and creative peers alike. Its influence on making creators think bigger, both literally and figuratively, in terms of level design, is still being felt 2 years after it was released, and doesn't look to be leaving anytime soon. By achieving such an intricate balance of polish, inventiveness, and an unparalleled sense of progression, Gaiden has managed to do what Monkey Ball did 2 years prior, and not simply raise the bar, but shoot it into the stratosphere. The effect of that is being felt now more than ever as an entire new generation of Romhacks awaits us within the next couple of years. Though the drought is tough for the moment, the amount of incredible work being done now on Launch, Monkey 2DE, the EX Revival, Stardust, Rush Battle, all of which have taken inspiration from Gaiden in one way or another, is inspiring. I gotta say, Generation 4 of Monkey Ball Romhacking is shaping up to be the best one yet. So if we have Gaiden at least partially to thank for that, then I think that's pretty special. So in case you've made it this far, and somehow haven't experienced Gaiden yet, go play the best Monkey Ball game since the classics. And for that matter, if you've made it this far without trying any of these, rest assured that getting a hold of them has never been easier. The Romhack spreadsheet I've compiled has links to everything, including the Desert Heatwave fix for packs that need it, as well as the GCT file for using debug mode on the original hardware, for packs with extra content affiliated with it. So, go play some custom Monkey Ball. I promise you won't regret it. So, that's it, right? That's every Monkey Ball Romhack from within the time frame I set. All covered. And while it's true that we've covered all of them, there's actually one more. Not to review though. Check the description of this video or the card on your screen. See you at the end.